This week on Christian World News, how archaeology is backing up the Bible. Scholars believe a recent discovery could be the place where Pilate put Jesus on trial. And a new documentary sheds light on the biblical story of the Exodus.
Plus, hope and healing after a devastating tragedy. How Myles Munroe Jr. and the Bahamian Church are dealing with the loss of evangelical leader Myles Munroe.
And Easter miracle. A young girl suffers from a deadly disease and is healed after her grandmother has an encounter with Jesus. Happy Easter, everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. It's great to have you with us. Well, it is the Easter season, and there's a lot of activity going on in Jerusalem. Inside the old city walls, discoveries at Herod's palace are captivating Jewish and Christian scholars.
More than 2,000 years of history are recorded in one building. Now there's new evidence that it could actually be the place where Pontius Pilate tried Jesus. John Waggy explains.
At the western edge of the old city, the Tower of David stands above the walls. 16 years ago, archaeologists found a building while working on the Tower of David Museum. Records on its walls go back even before the time of Jesus and the Roman governor who sentenced him to the cross, Pontius Pilate.
For years, experts suggested that Pilate handed down his death sentence from Antonia's fortress on the other side of the city, where the Roman soldiers were housed. But recent evidence uncovered here at the site of King Herod's palace indicates that the luxury-loving Pilate was more likely to have pronounced judgment here.
Archaeologist Amit Re'em helped discover the palace site in 1999. He's familiar with the history on these walls, from Herod's time until the British put a prison on it in the 1940s.
Until now, those impressive walls are the only remains from Herod's palace. We do not know what happened to the superstructures, to the palace itself. Maybe it was destroyed in the big revolt. Maybe it was destroyed by the Romans. Maybe it was destroyed by the Crusaders or the Ottoman.
We don't know exactly where Jesus was tried, where he had his interview before Pontius Pilate, but we know it's somewhere in Herod's palace.
David Pilated is pastor of Christ Church, just steps away from the site.
We know that the palace of Herod the Great eventually became Roman property after Herod's death, and that every year Pontius Pilate would come from Caesarea to Jerusalem here during the time of Passover to oversee the security of the city during the festival that the Jews called the Feast of Freedom. And it was at this time where if there was going to be trouble in Jerusalem, it would be during the Passover holiday.
Pilated says that in a way, the Tower of David encompasses the entire life story of Jesus.
Scholars have been saying for half a century that the life of Jesus begins at the Tower of David, or what was then Herod's palace. That's when the Magi come to visit King Herod. And his life ends basically when Pontius Pilate sentences him to death, pretty much in the same location. So there's some very interesting irony in this story.
Israeli archaeologist Renee Forestani is still struck by the power and opulence, even though she helped begin the digging.
Jerusalem is like an onion. You peel it, and it never ends. But then you cry a bit, but not too much. That is what happens here.
Pilated calls the Tower of David the best museum in the city and says tourists would do well to start their journey here.
Now we have the extra bonus of having the very place where Jesus was sent to execution by Pontius Pilate. And this will help Christians better visualize those monumentous events that happened to Jesus the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, in the last week of his life.
And just a couple of miles away, the Mount of Olives, where Scripture says he'll come again. John Waggy, CBN News, Jerusalem.
That was
Great
a cool
story.
piece,
Yeah,
wasn't
awesome.
it?
Fantastic. Well, this year, by the way, Easter coincides with the Jewish celebration of Passover. That story is told, obviously, in the book of Exodus.
More than a decade ago, a movie maker started investigating the Exodus story. His journey led to both a crisis of faith and an award-winning documentary. Here's Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem.
This is from the film Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus. According to the book of Exodus, Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt and into the wilderness for 40 years. Then Joshua led them across the Jordan River over here near Jericho into the Promised Land. Some say it's just a fable, but others say this new documentary provides evidence that demands a verdict.
I actually went to the location where the events were supposed to happen in Goshen in the eastern delta, and went to the archaeological sites, and that's what I was told, that there was no evidence for the Exodus.
Filmmaker Tim Mahoney's research into the Exodus and the Odyssey that followed produced startling results.
6 steps in the right sequence, and we matched the story of the Bible every 6 in all the steps, and shows evidence for the Bible that people have never seen before.
The film proposes that when you get the timing right, archaeology matches history.
The whole thing, from the beginning of the sojourn in Egypt, the slavery, Moses and the Exodus, the conquest of the Promised Land, is all there in one nice, neat line, but it's way too early. You look for a collapse in Egyptian civilization, and that's where you'll find Moses and the Exodus.
When you put those cities side by side, the biblical account and the archaeology match extremely well.
There's this idea that Ramesses is the pharaoh of the Exodus, and I think that that happens in a particular time of history. And when everyone looks at that particular time, they're actually correct that there is no evidence for the Exodus. But other archaeologists and Egyptologists were saying, but wait a minute, there are evidences that are earlier than Ramesses that match this story.
Mahoney presents both sides of the archaeological argument. Did the Exodus really happen?
I hate to disappoint people, but we have no evidence for a single mass migration of people from one country coming into another country. I don't believe there was a single event that we can call the Exodus.
This person can't have seen all this. He imagined it.
I'm very much against chronological revisionism.
So far, there is no documented evidence about the Exodus.
Exodus did not happen in the way that it is described in the text.
How can we prove that?
The film is very, very convincing because we give both sides of it. We let you hear from archaeologists who say there is no evidence and why, and then we let you hear from archaeologists and Egyptologists who say there is.
Using state-of-the-art animation, groundbreaking archaeology, and new interpretation, it's already made a profound impact.
We would show these films to people who had no understanding or interest in the story. Even atheists saw it. And what they said was, wow, I love this film, I love this approach. One atheist wrote, I guess you did prove that, this event might have happened, but it doesn't mean that there were any miracles. Israel.
Mahoney says it's a powerful tool to reach the skeptic.
If you've got family members that don't believe in God, or if you have people that are suspicious or want a scientific approach, this film gives you that type of opportunity to have those kinds of conversations. It's one of the most neutral and most intriguing types of films that allow you to have that opportunity.
The film challenges a powerful notion that the Bible isn't true.
For the last 50, 60, 70 years, people have been very critical of the Bible. If the story of the Exodus isn't true, then what Jesus Christ said and the apostles about Moses and the Exodus, then those statements are false. The whole Bible has a foundation within this story of the Exodus. What this film does is that it actually shows where the pattern of evidence is, and that, I think, has never been done before.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jericho.
Fascinating. I want to see that. Well, coming up, Miles Monroe Jr. talks about the pain of losing both of his parents in a plane crash. See how the Bahamas Faith Fellowship Church is healing 4 months after the loss of their beloved leader.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
Last November, the news that Dr. Myles Munroe and his wife had been killed in a plane crash shocked Christians around the world. It was especially devastating for Munroe's 2 children and his congregation in the Bahamas.
Yeah, George, it was. And today, his children and the church are looking forward with a new passion to keep the legacy of Myles Munroe alive.
It's one of the world's most popular vacation destinations. The white sandy beaches, tropical climate, and friendly people make the Bahamas a little paradise on earth. And it was here, on an island just 21 miles long by 7 miles wide, that Dr. Myles Munroe rose to international fame.
Cultivate means to bring out the best in everything around you.
It was also here, on November 9th, 2014, that the unthinkable happened. While flying in bad weather to a leadership conference, Munroe's plane hit a crane on approach to the airport. All on board died, including Munroe's wife, Ruth, 2 pastors from his church, and 5 others. The tragedy led many to ask,
why? Why did this have to happen? And I think in that moment, it kind of caused all of us to question for a moment.
Just 4 months later, the sounds of praise continued to rise from Bahamas Faith Ministries Fellowship in Nassau, the church Munroe founded. The big difference, their beloved pastor of more than 30 years is no longer at the helm.
There's a hole in all of our hearts. The pain, we still feel it. It is still hard to believe and accept. We lost our pastor, we lost our mentor, we lost someone who taught us.
Munroe's children, Myles Jr. and daughter Carissa, lost more than anyone that horrible day. 31-year-old Myles Jr., who normally shuns the stage, spoke at his parents' funeral.
There are no words. There is only faith and trust in God.
Although still grieving, Myles Jr. sat down to talk with us about how he's doing.
That depends on the day you ask me that question. Some days I honestly don't feel like doing anything. I just feel like not talking to anybody, just kind of being to myself.
What is helping you go forward now?
My faith in God keeps me moving. It allows me to know that, this is a part of some bigger plan that He has, and eventually, it'll reveal itself.
So how do you fill the shoes of a man who is an international speaker, author of 69 books, headed up a global ministry, and loved people so much he wanted everyone to know their value and purpose? You don't.
Says new pastor, Dr. Dave Burrows.
When it comes to filling his shoes, I realize that I'm left and I'm the there's only two of us connected to the vision. So somebody has to carry the vision on.
You were supposed to be on that flight.
I was. I said, sorry, Chief, I can't go because my daughter and we bought tickets to leave on Monday morning. So I said, I can't make it.
That day, Dr. Burroughs' wife, Angela, also lost a good friend, Monroe's beloved wife, Ruth.
Ruth was not a person who sought fame or glory. Ruth said and understood her purpose. And she said, even 2 days prior to the tragedy, she said, my purpose is to serve my husband.
To me, it seemed like my dad was just reaching his peak, and just about to go into that next phase of his ministry, of his life. I was excited for it. I was excited to be a part of it.
Interestingly, just a week before his death, Monroe spoke of death on this talk show.
I think it's my beautiful statement of dying. It says, it is finished. I want to die because there's nothing else to keep me alive. I've done what I was born to do.
Maybe that's what his life, or where his life was supposed to end, at the peak. So, all of us now can take this vision forward.
Today, Miles Jr. continues to head up his father's international ministry and is working on establishing the Miles Monroe Foundation to honor his father.
I want to make sure that I carry this legacy and carry it the right way. My sister and I, we have a lot that we want to do, a lot that we feel that needs to be done.
What's the thing you miss the most?
I miss being able to. My dad was, to me, the smartest man I've ever met. I felt like I could have gone to him and asked him for advice or, his opinion on anything. I miss those one-on-one conversations. So that's what I miss about my dad. My mother, I miss making her smile. It was always so easy for me to put a smile on her face. I'm a mama's boy, so, it was, her and I had a special relationship.
I want you to die because you poured out all of your dreams, ideas, visions, books, music, inventions, publications, that you died empty. That's the goal of life.
Although there will never be another Miles Monroe, his legacy will live on in the hearts and lives of the people he touched here in the Bahamas and around the world.
Wow,
George,
what a powerful ministry and a powerful man and family, yeah.
We've all been touched by his life. He spoke here in Virginia Beach many times. We've all read his books. There's only one Miles Monroe, but I was so grateful to get to go down there and so blessed that Miles Monroe Jr. I loved that interview because he was so real. I mean, this is a very painful time, but they're trusting God.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all we can do in these times, so God bless them. Well, up next.
The doctors gave this girl just 3 years to live, but her grandmother had a word from Jesus, and that word, well, it changed everything.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Pentecost 2015. From the corners of the earth, believers gather in Jerusalem. Walk where Jesus walked. Pray in Gethsemane. Rejoice at the empty tomb. Don't miss messages from over 100 world-renowned speakers and a score of popular worship artists. For more information and to register for the Empowered 21 Global Congress, go to Jerusalem2015.com. This May, Jerusalem.
Welcome back to Christian World News. When an American family adopted an infant from China, they gave her love and desperately needed medical care. However, at the tender age of 3, Macklin was given only a few years to live.
That's because she was suffering from hepatitis B and her organs were failing. But when her family attended an Easter play, her grandmother heard a message that, well, it changed everything. Here's her powerful story.
When I looked at Michaelin's picture, I knew I was her mom because I didn't see any imperfections in her. I looked straight into those eyes of hers, and from the moment I saw her and looked at those eyes, I knew that I was her mom because mothers don't see imperfections in their children.
Janelle McElroy and her husband Rance had 2 sons when they adopted Michaelin, a baby who had been abandoned at a Chinese orphanage.
I knew from the moment I saw her, I knew that she was the one that God intended for me.
When they brought Michaelin home at 18 months, she needed surgery for her cleft palate. She was malnourished and her development was delayed. She also tested positive for hepatitis B, but showed no symptoms as Janelle and the family brought her back to health.
By the time she was 2.5 years old, Michaelin was happy and healthy, and she was just as normal as any other 2.5-year-old could be.
When Michaelin was 3, she started showing symptoms.
I noticed that she was having some swelling, particularly around her eyes, and I noticed that she had really dark, concentrated urine.
Doctors confirmed Janelle's fears. It was hepatitis B. Michaelin's liver and kidneys were failing. Too young to undergo transplants, she was sent home with only 3 years to live.
It was very hard. I remember I cried out to the Lord on many occasions and said, God, why? Why would you give her to me and now turn around and take her away? Why would you bring her all the way here, let her have lived through all this and have overcome all of this to turn around now and let her die? Why? I don't understand.
The McElroys called on family and friends to spread the word and pray for Michaelin's healing. In the meantime, doctors prescribed an antiviral medication to help manage Michaelin's condition. But Janelle says she didn't fill the prescription because something told her to hold off.
I did at that time feel like it was God telling me, almost peace be still. Just wait a minute.
At the time, it was Easter season, and Janelle's family kept with their tradition of going to a Passion of Christ play by students at the University of Mobile. Michaelin's grandmother, Dr. Kathy Shepard, says this year the play took on a whole new meaning.
And I just looked up, and the young man that was playing Jesus looked out into the audience, and what I saw was those crystal blue eyes, and I saw Jesus. He spoke to my heart. I just felt a contact with Jesus and the Holy Spirit saying to me, Kathy, I see you. I've got this. And it washed all over me. He's got this.
She was that confident when she spoke to me. There was no, I think I heard, I feel I've heard. It was, I heard, I know. God told me this baby is going to be fine.
Janelle held on to that promise as people from all over the world prayed. Over the next several months, tests showed Michaelin's enzymes started dropping.
And I remember talking to my nephrologist. He said, I don't even know how to explain this. And I said, well, I do. It's a miracle because she was so sick. And now she's so healthy.
Michaelin continued to get better. And today, records show Michaelin's liver and kidneys are fully healed. She's also progressing through the stages of recovery from hepatitis B.
Just so thankful And I mean, I've seen Jesus, I've seen his work. He does miracles today. There was nothing the medical profession had done to turn her around. It was a touch from Jesus himself.
I do have that complete family I always wanted. McKaylin is sassy. She is prissy. She is sweet. How old are you?
5.
And where are you from?
China.
And where were you? Were you in Mommy's tummy?
No.
Where were you?
Heart.
In the heart? I see what God did for us, and it makes his resurrection even more paramount in my eyes and in my heart, because I see all that he went through, but that he overcame. And I know he did because I have evidence, tangible evidence in my little girl, that I really feel that without God's grace and mercy, she would not be here.
And today the tangible evidence of Jesus Christ is the death and the resurrection. And what a beautiful story this weekend to remember the power of the cross and the resurrection power. Beautiful.
Well said. Well said, Goenker. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Pat Robertson recently recorded a very special program to answer the question, does God still heal today?
What we're trying to do here, Scott, is to tell people how they can access the power of the living God through Jesus Christ.
Discover the answers and let your faith be encouraged.
And then Jesus spelled out of how we can have healing and how we can have miracles.
In Pat Robertson's latest DVD, Be Healed, you'll learn the biblical basis for healing today, how to exchange anxiety and worry for faith and confidence, the way to pray for your healing and healing for those you love. Plus, meet real people who've experienced the miraculous healing power of God.
The first thing I did was reached out for a lifesaver, and that was God. You know, you can put your trust in medicine, but the ultimate healing is going to have to be God.
Find out the biblical principles that lead to healing in Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Be Healed. Available now.
And finally, this week, every year, thousands of visitors celebrate the resurrection at a sunrise service at the Garden Tomb in Jerusalem.
Yeah, it's the place where many believe Jesus rose from the dead. CBN News in Jerusalem will live stream the service for us. You can see the broadcast on our website Saturday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But if you miss it, we'll post it on our site so you can watch it later. That would be so amazing to be there in person, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's it for this week's edition of Christian World News. Thank you so much for joining us.
Until next week, from all of us here, goodbye, have a happy Easter, and God bless you.